Hello and welcome to the STCfit podcast. I'll be your host today. My name's Nat Jurek, and with me I'll be joined by Ben Scott and Jason Galea. STCfit are a group of coaches who provide premium coaching and education services to high-achieving women who want to ditch the frustration and achieve the results they want when they want. On the podcast, we'll be discussing all things related to our 5-step method to experiencing total clarity in knowing how to achieve your goals, present and future. The podcast is brought to you by STCfit for all your online and personal training needs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a share and tag at Nat Jurek STCfit, at Ben Scott STC, and at Jason Galea _STC. Hope you enjoy the show. Now we know we're on.
I feel like this could go either way with you and I taking care of this podcast like via
Zoom with no Tam.
There's no Ben. So it really could go either way.
Yeah, well, we already spent 10 minutes trying to get my audio right. Tam's probably fuck, finally.
Yeah, I can't even believe I picked that up. But it just didn't sound right. But look at me go.
Have you done Zoom before? Yes, it's been 3 months of this.
Yeah.
It sounds like shit.
I've been Zooming for over 12 months and I still can't fucking get it right.
Well, at least we got that far.
Yeah.
Not much. I trained in the gym today, so that was exciting.
Yeah, we opened back up. Yeah, I was straight on the golf course.
Did it hail this morning? Was it raining?
It rained for 5 minutes torrentially. And we're literally about to hit the first tee box and we're sitting under cover and I'm like, why does this happen to me? And then it just blew over and it was blue skies, sunny. I had my jacket off.
Fuck yeah. I was doing a check-in.
Yeah.
And I was like, can you hear me? It's literally hailing.
Yeah, it was belting down. Yeah, it was really bad. And then, as soon as we packed up our gear and drove home, it rained again.
Yeah, Melbourne.
The golf gods were on my side. I mean, just for the weather. I'll train after this if I feel like it. Training's training.
Not going anyway.
I got to do four workouts in 7 days. I don't understand how people don't get it done when they do 4 days a week. It is the easiest thing to do.
It's so good. Four is the sweet spot. I feel like anything after that, you're starting to push it a little bit, but
yeah. I like 5 days when I'm training specifically for something, but at the moment it's just just train for life. Have an extra day to do whatever you feel like. So yeah, you can get most things done in 4 days. So yeah, it's maybe if I ever feel like getting serious about my training and actually pulling my finger out, I might do 5 days a week.
Yeah, and while we're in lockdown, I feel like 4 is just anything after 4, it's pulling teeth.
Yeah. I mean, I have no excuse. I have legit a gym in my garage now.
Must be nice.
Yeah, well, it is, but I still hate training in it. People look at it, so it's I know I sound like a sport brat. It's I've got a cable station, I've got a squat rack, I've got a leg extension, a leg curl, I've got a hack squat.
Do you have a hack squat? Are you sure?
Well, we're putting it together on Friday.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, the cable station has to be put together. So I've put most of it together, but there's things that require strong human people in multiples.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, I've got a set of 10 kilo dumbbells. So
yeah, you're really putting the innovation to the test. Yeah, I feel like if we went another week in that lockdown, it was
everyone's
soul was just about to get crushed.
I was I can handle this for probably 3 weeks. And then after that, it's we've either got to go back or I've got to find something to make it work.
I think it's harder because we already we're molded into the lockdown life. We did this last year. And we did
and I had equipment last year. I was this is not the same for me because I had 100 kilos. So I got 100 kilos of plates and a bench and a squat rack.
Yeah, true. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's a full downgrade.
You basically had a gym.
Yeah, pretty much. And now I do not have a gym.
Well, let's just hope we stay open.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So nice little segue into the topic for today, which is going to be training, which is hopefully half the reason that a lot of you guys are listening to the podcast because you're in the gym and you're working towards goals. So, what we want to unpack today is like just the problems that we see in terms of people in the gym training who have both strength and body composition goals.
Mhm.
And we're going to go into the weeds on the systems and the strategies that we use as coaches with our clients, and just the things that we believe pretty much everyone should be implementing to avoid like falling into the problems that we often see and that we speak about.
Yep. Yep.
So I guess in terms of like the biggest mistakes that we see or the biggest issues, I think the first one's just a bit of a no-brainer. It's not knowing how to move, and it's just not knowing technique, exercise, execution, and like just how things need to be performed. So I guess like when I say that and when I say poor technique, Jace, where does your head go in terms of like how that plays out for people and how it's going to influence their results?
Yeah. When we think about technique, we've got to understand like the predetermined idea of what a repetition would look like. So there's multiple techniques, because people are going to assume a technique to do a particular movement, and multiple people can do a movement, and their technique be a little bit different. But I think that what is more important is that we have this predetermined kind of overarching idea of like what this movement should look like for a person individually, and we want to make sure that they hit that on a consistent basis. Now, not everyone's going to be able to do that straight off the cuff. It's going to take a little bit of time. A lot of people's technique changes as they move and get stronger and become more, consciously aware of themselves in space. Obviously, adopt better skill and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's like we've framed the selection of the movement most of the time because the technique suggests that we're going to move in a fashion that's either going to work this particular muscle group or this kind of chain in the body, or it's going to allow this person to get better at X, like squatting. And we need to make sure that we're ticking the boxes to say to that person, like, hey, this is a squat, this is a row, this is a curl. You do this 95% of the time this way, you're going to stimulate the tissue, get the adaptations that you want, and you're going to do it injury free, which is probably more important than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Just as you were sort of saying that, it's like it's the foundation of everything. Because if you don't get that right, then you can't load yourself with whatever you probably could if you were executing movement well, which means you're like not going to be working at the effort that you need to be able to deliver the adaptation that you want. So it's just a bit of a downward spiral in terms of like getting the most out of your workouts.
Yeah, if we look at what happens when people have poor technique,
Mm.
it's and I guess I'm going to really come from this from more of an aesthetics point of view, just because that's typically the people that I'm working with. But it kind of applies to strength as well to a degree. But like the first one's injury prevention. So when you train poorly, just think of it like just hitting a broomstick on the ground. You do one bad rep and you hit a broomstick on the floor, nothing really happens. But it's like you do 100 bad reps and then hit a broomstick on the ground 100 times. It's like the broomstick's going to start to damage at the top. So it's like it's the same for us. It's like we do, 30 reps over 3 sets of 10, for example. We do 27 of those poorly and only do 3 well. And then you do that over a month. It's like you've done, over 100 bad reps. And it's like, it's kind of wondered, oh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, my elbow hurts. Oh, my this hurts. So we've got to think of it from that perspective. Obviously, when we have pain and discomfort, it changes, it alters performance. We can't lift as much. Perception of effort is higher. Performance is going to drop overall because we're not going to really send it on the sessions and accrue the stimulus required for the outcomes that we want. And then, I guess from a body composition perspective, and those people who do really just want to look good with no clothes on, if you have poor technique, you surrender your control of what you're stimulating. So if you're just moving weight from A to B, like side raises, probably the most poorly executed movement in the gym.
Yeah.
So like if you just go, oh, okay, so I've just got to flap my arms out to the side like a chicken, and make sure that my arms get out to the side. It doesn't really matter about shoulder positioning, not really kind of worrying about where my arm path is in the scapular plane, all of those kind of things. It's like we don't have control of what's being worked. It's just like whatever's involved in the movement for where you stand in position is going to be doing the work.
Mm.
It's not an accident that we have overdeveloped front delts, we have overdeveloped traps, we have this undesirable look for somebody. And it's typically for those people that aren't very conscious of how they move
Yeah.
and and just that constant endeavor for mastery. Like I say it all the time, like everyone's looking for the best diet, the best protocols, supplements. Some people are looking for more than that. And it's like, really, when you nail it down, and it's like all the gurus, all the head leaders in the space are saying the same thing. It's like, get really good at moving, get really good at performing your reps.
Yeah, it's probably like the same in the like body comp space, but something that you definitely see in the strength realm is like almost misinterpreting what things should feel like. So when it comes to like executing something, it's almost like driving fatigue instead of like driving like or stimulating the muscle that you want to be stimulating or the adaptation that you want, because there's almost this like misinterpretation of like, well, this feels hard. Is it hard for the right reason? Like, is it hard because I'm moving weight from point A to point B, how it should be moved? Or is it because like my back hurts or like my hips are fucked and like I can't actually do this? So I feel like that's like a really big one, especially in the strength realm. But I guess like you would see that as well when it comes to training for hypertrophy too.
Yeah, we talk about like people use sensation as a proxy to determine success of a set, a movement, and a workout. And it's like, oh, if I feel this here, then that's a good thing. And it's like, but sometimes sensation gives you the wrong information, because like if you are in a poor position, it's like maybe that you feel sensation in that muscle more because it has to work in an undesirable way to stabilize you, when if you put yourself in a better position, that you would probably get more work out of that muscle or out of that body or out of that system. So again, like when we think about technique, it's like, positioning is everything. So we all need to know how we position ourselves. And this is where we can start to really go down a rabbit hole, because then it's like, well, technique is about assessing how someone moves. It's making sure that they can fit into the criteria for the exercise. And then it's like, okay, so to meet the requirements of this movement, and when we look at how you're put together, we're going to have to move in this fashion within this range for you to successfully tick the box and do this on a regular basis and not get hurt. But if we're not movement centric based, and we're just like A to B kind of, just got to get this to this period, doesn't matter how I get there. So you're just leaving so many things up to chance.
I heard you use an analogy, I think it was on your story, about moving weight. Like you had 4 people and like you asked X to move someone somewhere. I really like that. Do you want to go through that?
Yeah. So when we talk about form, and we think about it like your body is a system, and think about each muscle group as being like a person. So let's say we have 4 people lifting a piano, and we can choose, who lifts whatever amount of weight of that piano between those 4 people, right? So that's 4 different muscle groups, 4 different people. So if we are in a certain position when we pick this piano up, one person is probably going to take most of the load, and the other 3 people are not. So if we're not conscious, if those 4 people aren't conscious of that, then that one person, when he picks up that piano and he does that consistently, he's going to get the most strongest. Now, what if he wasn't supposed to? What if he was only supposed to be there to really stabilize that weight? And the other 3 people with the other 3 muscle groups were supposed to take that piano and help lift that up a flight of stairs. What if all 4 of them were supposed to do it together? So this is where the only way those 4 people can lift that piano is if they actually get into the right position for all 4 of them to take the weight. Or if we wanted that one person who is lifting more now to not lift as much, and for those other 3 too, we would have to change the position of all 4 of those people to sway the resistance back over to those 3 people. So that is essentially what we're doing in the gym. We're playing around with positions to make sure that the resistance that's being applied on the body, so that we can choose what muscles create force to push back, is being done.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it. Like when we could talk about it for ages, but I think like hopefully you guys starting to really kind of get the message. It's like, we can't just walk into the gym and go, okay, so this goes from here to here. So I just got to do that. It's like,
Yeah, the reason that I like that analogy is because it's a really simple way for people who are still going into the gym just thinking about moving weight from point A to point B to actually conceptualize the idea that like there's more that goes into it. It's not just like get this from here to here as long as it feels hard, like I'm doing what I need to.
yeah, and it's like there's some coaches, their whole business is run off being really good at prescribing and teaching people how to perform exercises.
Yeah.
So it's like if you can go that deep on it and run a business on that, it's like that's
Yeah.
just how deep of a rabbit hole this could be. So if you're really, really into your training and you want to get the most out of it, time is finite, energy to a degree is too. It's like you really want to make sure that your coach, or yourself, or both of you, are really trying to kind of create mastery for you with your training.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the endeavor.
Yeah. Outside of that, I think like the next thing that we sort of look at in terms of just making sure that like someone's doing something that's within their capabilities when it comes to exercise execution is our progression and regression model, which I think is just super important in terms of being able to meet someone where they're currently at, which
Yeah.
is why a lot of people are really poor at executing movement, is because they're trying to do something that's just far too gone for where they're currently at, which means that like you're just never going to be able to do it because you haven't earned the right to be able to do that yet.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. You got to earn the right to move, and you got to earn the right to do things like put a bar on your back, even just to add extra resistance on top of your own body weight. Like people
Mm.
forget that for a lot of exercises that we're performing in free space, like there's resistance applied from the body weight that you currently have. So, being able to control that in space, and do it in a safe fashion that ticks the boxes that or adheres to the technique is going to be hard enough to do. It's like, put them in an uncomfortable position that's foreign to them with a bar placed in a position that they've never felt before, and then trying to get them to move in space, which they haven't really done that often, and expect them to do it in a safe and effective manner. It's like, it's kind of like it's taking way too many steps ahead. It's the whole, like, you're teaching a baby to sprint before they can even crawl, and it's like, no one really gets good at running or sprinting or anything like that until they do the crawling and the walking. And coaches get into the habit, and without making this a personal training podcast, but coaches and people,
Yeah.
people in all kinds, really want to go to the top end, because it's like, if I'm doing the hardest exercise or the most complex movement, there's the idea that I'm going to get the best gains from that.
Mm.
Now, you only get the best gains from the things that you perform mastery with, or as close to mastery as possible. So if you can't squat with a bar on your back, but we gave you a weight to hold in front of you, and you could squat that efficiently and effectively, then which one gets the better progress? Like, muscles lengthen and shorten, when extreme muscle lengths or working to long muscle lengths is great for hypertrophy. It's proven by science. So it's like, if you wanted to grow your quads or develop your legs or whatever muscle group it was, it's like, would that not be better right there and then?
Mm.
Is there going to be a better transfer to putting a bar maybe in front of you, or putting a safety bar on your back, and where it's still kind of front loaded, and then you transition to a bar on your back? It's like, is that subtle change over time going to be a better transition than me working with you for 6 weeks, trying to get you comfortable under a barbell and teaching you how to squat at the same time?
Yeah, I think like for the person doing this on their own, there's probably a couple of reasons why it's not actually implemented. There's exercises that are glorified.
Yeah.
A lot of it happens on social media. So you're just under the impression that you need to be doing X, Y, and Z, most likely squatting with the barbell, deadlifting with the barbell, hip thrusting with the barbell to get the outcome that you're after. And the second one is just probably like not knowing what's available to you in terms of like progressions and regressions. So I, like, speaking from personal experience, 5 years ago, I would have had no idea of the steps before using a barbell back squat. Like, I remember going under a bar and thinking, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know what else to do. So like, I'm just going to do this, which I think is a problem that a lot of people have.
Yeah, I guess like that's a really refreshing thing to say to someone like myself, just because, like, being in the education space, in the personal training space for a very long time. And I'm also very fortunate to have a very good circle. So I don't really kind of experience this that often. But it's unfortunate that people have to get exposed to misinformation and form an opinion on exercise around that misinformation. Like, the whole muscle building movements, like you have to have this movement in your program. Like your legs won't get your glutes won't get any bigger than they are right now unless you do like deep squats. It's like, what do you fucking mean? Like
Yeah.
your muscles don't know what exercises you're doing. It's like they respond to tension. You place them under tension, they have to contract and produce force to move the resistance the other way. It's like we can be very, very methodical with how we select those movements and how we load those muscles. If that person isn't able to squat or hip thrust or, do it with a barbell or in a complex fashion. But it's like, if you look at, someone in the fitness space, it's like, they have to give definitives. It's glorified. It's sexy. It's, you must do this movement. So these people they create this tribe and stuff, but it's a tribe of, bias and misinformation in most cases. And for anyone who's like trying to form an opinion off someone else, it's like, they're good at those movements. No one knows that that person had to learn how to squat at some point. No one knows that that person couldn't break depth at some point. It's like, this is what you're seeing is years and years of practice,
like the polished end product.
You're seeing the end result, or someone who's like, got 25% of the race left to run. It's like no one's seeing them at the start, where they couldn't do anything and they had no conscious awareness of where they were in space, and skill was poor, and everything was hard and things like that. So we always look at the endpoint and we go, all right, so that person got there because of what they're seeing right there and then. But it's like, well, no, think about how you get good at anything. It's like, it's a series of skills that are broken down into things that you can absorb, that you can perform competently to a point where we start to add them all together and do them in a complex fashion once we can have mastery in all these little pieces.
Yeah.
Like, you squat to a box in a lot of cases because it's safe and that person has no apprehension. So we take that away. We remove that from the process and that person goes, cool. So all I've got to think about now is like where my feet are at and what my upper body is doing. If I fall, I hit this box. Cool. And then all of a sudden it's like, just touch the box. And then we remove the box. And then we add a weight in the front. Then we might add to the side. We might add it, it's like no one saw the process involved in that. But 90% of the people that are really good at squatting, for example, did that. It's just, sure, there's a spectrum. People learn faster than others. But it's like, if you don't have a progression and regression model, you don't have the ability to slot yourself or someone into that model for where they are right there and then, and give them the opportunity to progress to the next step. It's asking someone to go a whole story.
Yeah.
Or just go straight to the top of the building. It's like, you're asking a lot of someone to get really good at that really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys are looking for a model or said model that like Jace is talking about, we've got an article, I think it's called Progress and Regress for Success. Ben's got it up on Medium. So it'll literally take you through, I think it's the squat, the progressions that we use for that, but it'll show you the system and the model that you can apply to, all of the exercises as well, so that you're not taking these massive leaps and you're actually, meeting yourself where you're at and getting the most out of your exercise execution.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing. It's like getting the most out of your training.
Yeah.
Again, like it's like time is finite and so is effort. So put yourself in a position to maximize the benefits from your training just with where you're at. And where you're at is different for everybody, but we understand that. And the goal is for us to progress you guys in the right direction. But we want to make sure we put you in a position where, you're competent with the task that's at hand and not something that's just insurmountable and dangerous,
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess like the next thing from there, it's like, if you don't really know how you should be moving, the next problem that we run into is like, you don't know how to fix things when things don't look right, or you don't actually know what you're looking for, which is also a really big problem because you've got nowhere else to go when something doesn't work.
A lot of people don't get encouraged to self-assess their movement. We're really big on it. We expect, people, especially if the goal is movement biased. So, say powerlifting, for example, where we want mastery in squat, bench, and deadlift, where we require videos to be, kind of sent in for assessment. But we're coaching people along the way of those like reference lines, we call them. It's just like figuratively putting a human into a 2D space, and drawing lines between, kind of important axes or points on the body that in alignment with like the resistance. So we can kind of just get a really rough idea of what that person should look like if we were drawing lines within them, hence the term reference lines. But people aren't aware of those things. They're like, there's no self-assessment rep to rep. There's no self-assessment set to set. There's no reflection post training session. Like, how did I move today? Did everything feel good? Did I lift more? Obviously that having a program and reflecting on those things helps, reinforce this process. And then having an objective eye of someone who, knows a lot more about movement than say like the general population, which is what a coach is hired for, just to able to give, constructive feedback. Like, hey, this knee was kind of caving in on the way down on the squat there. Really want to see that knee kind of like, keep over that ankle, for example. So we can then pre-frame that, or just have solutions or cues in the mind of the lifter when they go to perform the movement again. Is that they're performing things like good and then they're performing things not so good. It's generally a skill breakdown. And then it's like, if they're performing things consistently, not to the technique, then it could be something way deeper than that. And it's like, they might need some intervention. They might need to go and see an allied health professional. There might need to be some specific programming to make sure that this person doesn't do something, doesn't hurt themselves. So self-assessment of movement is important, and people need to be aware of it, but they need to be taught as well.
Yeah, I think whilst obviously we are going to always preach for having an objective eye and it being super valuable to have someone else who's just like external viewing what you're doing, I think there is so much value in knowing how to do that for yourself whilst you're in the gym. Because
100%.
if you're training by yourself, say 4 or 5 times a week, and you're posting 3 videos up for your coach, per week to assess the way that you're moving, realistically, how much is this person actually seeing from how many points of view for that movement? And then outside of that, what's happening all of the other time? So if you don't know what you're looking for within yourself and you can't feel that for yourself and go through that like purposeful, intentional, like critical reflection of like, how does this feel? Do I feel X where I should, or, is something like moving that it shouldn't, or like, being able to assess that on your own, as well as being able to record that for yourself and like view that once you've done the set, and then be able to make changes as you go set to set. Because just think about how much time you're wasting if you're only getting that feedback from your coach at the end of the week, rather than being able to assess that and fix things as you go. Like, it's just a way more efficient way to do things.
Yeah. And this stems back to that technique conversation. It's like, if this person has a great idea of what the technique should look like for them, so making things work within the individualization of movement for somebody, they can then use these like self-assessment framework that we are really big on, that we teach people to then go, okay, cool. So this is what this is supposed to look like, arm to shoulder joint to hip joint, hip joint to knee to ankle. This should kind of look this way, so I can successfully determine whether this was, sufficient, or if there's any feedback I can give myself to carry into this next set. And I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say like, should I film every set that I do? So you don't have to, but if something doesn't feel good, or you don't have confidence in a movement, it's like, there's no better tool than to have something that, films you, captures you in live time, and then have the ability to break it down into really small frames as well, and just see where things fall apart. It gives you a lot of information. It's actually why mirrors are supposed to be in the gym. It's like, not to take your shirt off and, flex and stuff like that. Sure, it's very tempting, especially when you're shredded. But it's actually what mirrors were supposed. It's like mirrors are like the 70s version of having a smartphone.
Yeah. So what else were you gonna do? Your Nokia didn't do that.
You can't recall back, so you have to look back. You have to look at yourself in real time, and I think there's tremendous value in like being old school. Like, we had to we didn't have phones and watches to tell us we were tired and tell us we were hungry and tell us how active we needed to be. And we didn't have the ability to like, capture something and then tune off while you were doing something because you knew that you could reflect later. It's like we had to be present. We had to listen to our bodies, look at it, assess during real time, make decisions and change things on the fly. And I think that there's tremendous value in that, which I really would like to see somewhere met in the middle. It's like, yeah, cool, we got all this technology to use, but it's like, could we not capitalize on, what we've done for decades and centuries before that, which is just be present with how we feel and what we're doing in that very moment.
Yeah.
But
yeah, do you know what, actually, when I signed up at the new gym that I went to, I looked around and I was like, there is not one fucking mirror in this whole place. I was like, this is so weird.
Yeah, it's old school.
What do I do?
yeah.
So weird. So when it comes to like, I guess your squat, bench, deadlifts, we spoke about the reference lines that we refer to. There's also another article that you guys can go to, which I think is 360 degrees of movement, some medium. So that'll run you through like the reference lines that we're looking at and apply it. I think it's to the squat again. So you'll be able to unpack that. But I'm curious from a like hypertrophy standpoint, if you kind of want to run through, like, does that change when you're looking at something like a single arm row? What are you looking at? Or a bicep curl? Like, what's the process there in terms of assessing movement for someone who's got goals outside of squat, bench, deadlift?
So without making this super complicated.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I just fucking opened up a massive rabbit hole.
I'm used to delivering this information to coaches.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand like where the line of force is, right? So what that means for you guys at home, it's just like where's like, if you drew a straight line, kind of where the resistance is coming at you through your body, it's like, where would it be? So if I was standing in front of a cable machine and the cable pulley was like halfway through my body and I walked away with it and I was rowing it, like say like standing up, that line would be going straight through my body. If I was lying flat on a bench and I had dumbbells in my hands and I was, pushing away from me, if I drew a line through, say like my chest to the sky, it's like, that's that figurative line of force, right? So that line is where the resistance is, requiring these muscles to generate force and push against the resistance, whether it's or pulling against the resistance or pushing, depending on the exercise. So we need to think about that. We also need to think about, the capacity of a joint to move in a certain way. So each joint's structured to move in a certain fashion. So we don't really want them to move in a manner that they're not capable of, because that's how we get hurt. So those two things are quite important. It's like, how's the resistance acting on the body? What joints are involved in the movement? And what capacity do they have to move? Then the nerdy side of it is like, your muscles are shaped in a way that dictates how they move. So coaches know, and exercises were designed to move in a way that challenge muscles more so than others. So we need to make sure that we're looking at the line of force, the position of the body, the joints involved and what their capacity is to move. And if that muscle is positioned in a, or positioned itself in a way that allows it to function with the way it's shaped. So it's really hard to explain it any other way than that. But it's like, that's the best way to, from a body composition perspective, understand why, there's a lot of minutiae in like how we change movements to really bring up muscle groups and make someone look in a specific way. It's like, that's why if someone comes to you and goes, Jason, I want nice shoulders and nice glutes, it's like, I can do that for you, because we're going to move in a fashion. We're going to select these movements to do this, to stimulate this tissue. And we want to make sure that we move in this way. So it's capacity of the muscle to do the movement, capacity of the joint to, do the movement as well. And then it's like making sure that the line of force is actually stimulating that tissue.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like when we looked at what are the problems that a lot of people run into, it's not knowing the right exercises for them. And I think when we say that, people are probably like, well, what do you mean there's like bad exercises for me, or like exercises that I shouldn't be doing? And it's exactly what you sort of just mentioned. It's like, we're all sort of set up in a specific way and we're all built differently. And if you're not working to your advantages, then you're not going to get the desired outcome that you're working towards.
Yeah, that's it. Like, there's still reference lines. Like, we can still draw a reference line. You can still draw this 2D image for someone in a hypertrophy perspective. It's just that we need to make sure that we understand where the force is coming from, and it's like, is the target muscles that we're using or trying to develop to get this desired look that we want, are they actually in that line of force? Are they actually getting challenged to the maximum capacity for this movement? Because when we talk about programming, which we're not going to talk about today, it's like that's a heavy influence on exercise selection and exercise order and overall program design. So when we flip it back, it's like, if it's so important when we put together a plan for somebody, it's going to be super important for them to be able to execute it too.
Yeah.
That's how we get the best results.
Yeah, 100% agreed. So I guess the next thing that we sort of look at in terms of being able to execute movement well, being able to troubleshoot exercise execution, choosing exercises that are going to suit you and work to your advantage. The last thing that we sort of look at when it comes to training comes down to like effort and load selection and managing your rep in reserve. And I guess something that we spoke about at the start was, when you don't have any of this, the initial foundational stuff down pat, you can't do any of that. Like, you can't work to a capacity that you need to like get the adaptations that you want.
Yes. Like, effort is a hard thing to teach.
Yeah. 100%.
And if you look at every effort model, percentage loading, RPE, rep and reserve, like all of those things are there to give someone a framework to know how hard they should train. Now, prescribing a load for somebody is great if they can perform the load, but what happens when they can't? How does that make that person feel? Does it put them in a position where they could potentially hurt themselves? So there's like pros and cons, right? RPE, it's really good to go off like, how hard did that feel? Can you score this out of 10? And if we score 8, it means that there's probably 2 reps left. But it's like, what if that person doesn't know how hard it is? What if they were so distracted by the exercise that they couldn't really give you a score? So it's like, is that score accurate? I don't know. It's like, what if it was the first time they ever did it and they can't tell you how hard it was, and it was super fucking hard because it was so complicated and there were people around and it was loud and etc. It's like, okay, well, there's a flaw there. And it's the same with rep and reserve. It's like, it's really easy to communicate to someone and say, hey, how many reps did you have left in that set? If I put a gun to your head and I said, do 2 more, could you have done it? Yes. If I put a gun to your head and said, do 10, could you have done it? No. How many do you think you could have done? 4. And then all of a sudden they do 7, right? Yeah. So that's great for a communicative process between coach and client. It's like, or even yourself. It's like, could I have done another 1.5 reps? Probably. Okay, good place to start. So then what we have to do is teach them teach them what effort is. And get them to teach themselves what effort is. It's like, put yourself in situations where you have to fucking train as hard as you can. Yeah. AMRAPs are good. Drop sets are good. We do testing weeks for a reason. And it's like, if I'm with a client and it's testing week, I'm like, fuck yeah. For them, they're like, oh, is testing week a waste of time with you? It's like, no, it's actually the most valuable time. Because
you're gonna learn.
It's like, this is how we set how high to the sun we fly, mate.
Yeah.
It's like, you want to fly at a warm ratio to the sun. If you fly and it's cold, by the end of the program, you're only getting warm. If you fly at the start and it's warm, you're going to get to hot, and hot is good, at some point. It's like, we want to get to your max potential and train there, because that's where the real good stuff happens. So understanding effort is super hard, but it is super important, because that is how you create this shift in the system that makes it adapt. It's how you get stronger. It's how your bum gets bigger. It's how you drop body fat. It's like, you got to create this shift for your body to go, fuck, I need to change. I need to meet the demands that I'm being imposed of me right now, and they're really hard. So it comes down to being able to put yourself in the right position, maximally perform, be able to assess if you could correct yourself to get more performance, do it in a fashion where you're not injured. So everything that we've spoken about allows us to get this effort, and then we need to teach what effort really is.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with someone at the gym this morning about, like, how long it took me to realize what effort was and like what I was actually capable of. And I think I've been training with you for like 3 years now, and I'm like, fuck, it's probably only this year where I'm like, yeah, I actually could push to my limits most of the time. Like prior to probably this year, I was just undershooting for like 2 years, and God knows what was happening before that. So I think the sooner that you apply a system and you're conscious of that, the faster you speed up that process, the better your results are going to be.
Yeah, and remember that when you're like, when we talk about training age, if you're new to the game, 1 to 12 months, maybe 18, you don't have to train to your maximum potential to get gains. Right? The stimulus is like of training and being regimented and getting close is still going to be sufficient, right? It's like but if you want to take that step and you've been training for, 2, 3, 4, 5 years and you want extraordinary results, it's like, this is where the people that train the hardest win. I've never met somebody, or only met very few people who don't really train that hard and they look amazing. And it's just like, outside of those people that are just genetically gifted and their parents were meant to be together to make children, the rest of the people, it's like they work hard. I've never met someone who doesn't work hard who works hard and doesn't get results. So it just doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. It's like, so we just need to teach it in a way where we manifest most of that work ethic in a way that's strategic, intentful. We can reflect on it. Maybe there's times where we don't have to work that hard, backing off, recharging the batteries, and just doing it in waves to make sure that person stays in the gym. Because the brute that goes into the gym and sends it every session is the person that goes, oh, I just can't be fucked in 4 weeks' time, and I don't want to go to the gym.
Yeah.
I only did 2 sessions this week. And it's like, yeah, it's because you're fucked. It's because you're burnt out. So we need to channel that effort.
Yeah, I was just about to say as well, it's also goal dependent too. So we're not saying go into the gym and work to a 1 rep in reserve for your back squat every single week. Like, we've got to be intelligent in terms of how we're applying this stuff. Otherwise, you'll just run yourself into the ground and you'll break way sooner than you need to.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. Like, we can tell you guys like that training hard is important. There's a lot to managing the effort. We will talk about that in a separate episode, because again, all of these are like
programming rabbit hole.
Everything we've spoken about today is a can that could be spoken about on its own.
Yeah.
But it's like, effort is a thing that you guys need to learn. It needs to be managed. There's a time and a place to do high levels of effort, moderate levels of effort, and low. And sometimes they can happen within a workout, and sometimes they can happen over a program. So it really depends on the goal. But at all times, if you're not conscious, like if you don't have that reflection of like, how hard was that? Then that's when you have the question to your coach, or you might ask yourself, it's like, when do I up the weight? Like, how do I know? And it's like, when the subjective difficulty drops and you feel like you could lift more and you're hitting the reps in your program, you now have a really good framework of decisions to go, yeah, I really should lift more, so yeah, I don't want to talk about it too much more, because then we kind of eat into another episode of programming. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking again. But yeah, effort's super important.
Yeah. I think Ben also has an article on this. I cannot remember what it's called. Do you remember what it is?
We've talked about effort a lot. I've written about it in a couple of articles. All these articles can be found on the website, guys. So just stcfit.com, navigate yourself to articles, and follow the names. We'll probably get Tam to put them in the description as well. But I've talked about effort in relation to body composition a lot, because it is quite important. And I know Ben's referenced it in some of his articles just in relation to strength training, because they are a little bit different. And there's times where they do differ as well.
Yeah. So
we'll probably go into the weeds on specifically in other episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys are a little bit lost on where to start, head over to the website. You'll be able to find the articles over there. And there's a whole heap there that you'll be able to eat up. In terms of training, we'll also have YouTube videos coming out on all of this stuff within like the next couple of months. So you guys, if you're you don't like to read and you prefer to listen to this, we'll be going into the weeds on all of that in a lot more detail. Cool. So probably like the last thing to say here is like, it's a nice time to plug our education course, which is Be Bulletproof. And everything that we've spoken about in this episode is exactly what we aim to teach in the course, specifically when it comes to training. So knowing exactly how to move, knowing exactly how to assess movement, knowing how to warm up and set yourself up and prepare for a session appropriately, and then knowing how to use effort metrics to maximize your training. And if you know exactly how to do that, then bulletproofing your outcomes is all that you have to do. Like that's going to do the job for you.
Yeah, I think providing the stuff that we have within the course is something that I wish I had when I was training, and it took me a lot of time to work out, a lot of mistakes and a lot of time and effort wasted, just to kind of put a framework together, decision making, reflection, those kind of things. So if you're one of those people where training sits, really high up the totem pole of things that are important to you, and you are invested in getting the maximum outcomes for the time and effort that you spend in the gym, it's like we've taken care of every single step to allow you guys to make the best decisions for yourselves, to be the person that you want to be, live the lifestyle of that person. And it's like, get the goals and fucking keep them too. Like set new ones. I'm all about that. It's like, set the goal, achieve it, but then set a different goal. Don't be that person like who sets the same fucking goal, achieves it, but has to achieve it again because they fell off the wagon. It's like, did you fall off the wagon, or like just was the plan not for you? I don't know.
Yeah. Which, we'll run through all of this stuff in terms of like any goal that you guys want to achieve, whether it be strength, physique, performance based, like we'll have it all covered, fat loss. So if you are interested, head over to the STCfit website. We're currently just starting off the first round, but you'll be able to apply for round 2 if that's something that you're interested in. Sweet. I think that's a pretty good place to leave it.
Yep. So STCfit guys on Instagram, STCfit Learning for some of the coaches out there or people that are just like wanting to nerd out a little bit on training. Myself, you can find me on Instagram at Jason Galea _STC, and you can find Nat at
STCfit.
That's the one. There you go. Everyone's got different handles. YouTube, like we said, a lot of the stuff we spoke about today was on the website as well, guys. So STCfit.com, you can navigate through the website. There's a ton of stuff on there. There was a lot of articles we spoke about today, and there's links to YouTube with relevant videos too. So plenty of content for you guys to absorb.
Sweet.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think next fortnight we'll either be back with programming or nutrition. Awesome. So we're into the fun stuff now. So
lots of good stuff to talk about.
Yes.
All right. See you next time, guys.
See you next week.